All right, Tyler, man, thanks so much for joining me. I'm on the show today. Welcome to the All Around Adventure Podcast.
Yeah, man, happy to be here. I know we've been trying to set it up for a little while now and stars align, so I'm stoked to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, just kind of fill me in a little bit here. Is just you kind of told me that you're from Michigan, just like how I am, but now I found my way down south to Texas. But you went a little bit further west of me, and you are up in Montana right now. How'd you kind of end up over there, man?
Yeah, so originally I went to college in Bowling Green, Ohio, which wasn't too far from the Michigan line, so not a crazy drive. And then after school, um, kind of just messed around a little bit, had some odd jobs, and then got a job at the police academy in Nashville, Tennessee. Long story short, worked there for 3 years, and it was actually the COVID year. My wife and I, we were supposed to take a vacation to Florida, like most Michigan people do, and everything was just jacked up. Couldn't fly anywhere, couldn't stay anywhere, no bars or no restaurants or nothing was open down there. So I was like, why don't we just go somewhere remote? And she's like, where do you want to go? And I was like, Montana, like kind of just randomly picked a spot on the map. And she's like, what's there? And I was like, I think a whole lot of nothing. And she's like, all right, cool, sounds good. So we went and spent, I think it was 7 days and hit Yellowstone National Park and stayed in Bozeman, just kind of bebopped around. And we got on our flight to go back to Tennessee, and we were both just kind of like down in the dumps, like not wanting to leave. I was like, man, we should move here. And my wife was like, yeah, we should move here. And to sum it up, freaking less than a year later, we were packing up the vehicles and driving to Montana, and that's just kind of where we ended up, and here we are.
What was kind of like the COVID vibes at the time when you went to Montana? Because you said you were concerned about Florida and with a lot of things being locked down. But what did you kind of observe with people in Montana or just Montana as a whole, wherever you got to go?
It was like not a thing. Like nobody talked about it. Nobody acted like anything was going on in the world. No one was wearing masks. Everybody was just carrying about their business, and it was kind of strange that we were going into restaurants and just walking around the park, being close to people, and we're like, man, we feel like we're doing something illegal out here, but nobody seemed to give a care about it, and which was awesome because, I mean, you went through it just like everybody else in the world. It was tough times, you're pretty like remote, and you're just kind of doing your own thing and not really getting to socialize a whole lot and go out to eat or anything like that. And when we got to Montana, it just really wasn't a thing. Like nobody was really paying much of attention to it, which was nice. It was a good change up. So yeah, I loved it.
So, what did this look like for you as far as, you said you were working as a police officer there in Tennessee. So, what did this kind of look like as far as stepping away from your role there and just kind of uprooting your life as well as your wife and just, making that plunge like way out there? I mean, just what did that process sort of entail?
I was just very honest with the like my supervisors that I was working for. I had recently switched to like precincts. So I was working on the south side of town, ended up going to the east side of town, which was way better leadership and things of that such. Got along with everybody over there. And I was telling them like, hey, I'm gonna go have an interview here. And they're like, oh, okay. And they were all just like super jealous. They were like, man, I hope you get it. Like they were pumped about it. And I ended up having to go down there for like a psych exam and like a drug test. And they're like, yeah, we need you here in 2 days. And I was like, well, I still have to check with my current job. Like I can't just like bounce. I got to make sure I can get it on the calendar and everything else. So I went up to the sergeant. He's like, you need to go. Yeah, take care of it. So I was in Montana for like 14 hours, just flew there, flew back, did what I had to do. A couple weeks later, they're like, hey, you got the job and you got 6 weeks to get here. So that was stressful. We had to sell our house. We sold it by ourselves to a couple over FaceTime, believe it or not. And yeah, just it was like we could have. My wife and I talk about this quite a bit. Those 6 weeks of our lives, like we could honestly probably write a book about all the things that we accomplished in such a short amount of time. I mean, we moved 26 hours across country in 6 weeks, packed up everything, a dog, all our belongings, both vehicles. I mean, everything. And we made it work with like a week to spare, sold our house, bought another house. Like it was just wild. It was a crazy time, but thank God it all worked out. And like I said, here we are.
So obviously stressful with a lot of moving parts of getting yourself like over there. But once you actually like landed in Montana, so to speak, and of course I say landed like you flew, you said you drove all the way there. But when you arrived in Montana, is just, were you able to kind of sort of hit the ground running, or what do you think you kind of were on shaky legs a little bit making a move like that?
Well, it was interesting. Like I kind of joked about how we sold our house in Nashville to a couple over FaceTime. That's how we freaking bought our house in Montana. So when we got there, I mean, we're driving through the neighborhood and we pulled in the driveway, and this is the first time that we're fixing to actually physically walk through the house. And I'm just like, well, hope we like it. And thank God we did. That's where I'm at currently as we do this podcast. But got lucky, picked a great neighborhood, picked a house that is far too big for us, but hopefully we'll grow into it. But the funny thing is that we had to live out of an Airbnb for like a month as we were going through the process of buying this house. And luckily they let us move in before we even closed, which was really cool. But yeah, just stressful, man. But you know, we made it work, and we gave ourselves like a week kind of leeway. So when I got here, I didn't have to start working right away. So we kind of had a week to like just take a breath. And that was huge, because if we would have showed up and, you know, I would have had to go to work the next day, that could have been even more difficult than it already was. So it ended up working out great, and very blessed that it did.
Outstanding. So kind of going back a little bit here, what sort of set you down that path to become a law enforcement officer? Because it's not an easy job. It's a very, very taxing career. And, you know, and many might even say, you know, a very underpaid career at that too. I mean, of course, depending on what department you're a part of. But what was it initially that actually kind of inspired you to go down that route?
Yeah. So my dad, he was like really big on wanting me to go to college. So before Bowling Green, I went to a small Division II school to play baseball. Long story short, that didn't work out as, you know, as well as we thought it would. And I wasn't sure what I was going to study, and I was like, business. You know, like everybody was like, yeah, I'll study business. And I'm like, what kind of freaking? I don't know anything about business. I don't even know what the heck I want to do. And then, like my sophomore year, like when I transferred, I was like, I'm just gonna. What about criminal justice? Like that sounds cool. And I've gotten asked this question on a few shows before, and you know, 9 times out of 10, you'll ask somebody the question that you just asked me, and they'll be like, "Well, I just really wanted to help people, and I wanted to make an impact." Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, you know, all that's cool and it's fine and dandy, but I thought I'd be good at it, in all honesty, and I had no idea what else I was gonna do. So I was like, I'll give this a shot, and I thought I'd be good at it, and I think that I was. I mean, depending on who you talk to, everybody has their own opinions, but pound for pound, I think I was very good at my job. I knew how to get the job done. Of course, there's a million different ways to do that particular job, and I did it a certain way, which was effective for me. So yeah, I just thought that I would excel at it, and I think I did that.
So now, of course, a very important component of being a law enforcement officer is, of course, the physical training and making sure that you're staying physically fit. And of course, you know, this is something that you dabble into just on your own time. You know, you've done ultra races, and you're a backcountry bow hunter as well, which will certainly kind of get into those aspects of your life a little bit later on in this conversation. But is just with working as a law enforcement officer, having just gone through this arduous move, and then, you know, still making sure that you're showing up as in your obligations as a husband, is just, what did that kind of like look like for you, just to make sure that you're still taking care of yourself physically, but still, of course, making sure that you're doing all those other aspects of your life?
Yeah, a great question. I'm really big on like, and this might come off selfish to some listeners, but if I'm not taking care of myself, like first and foremost, then I can't serve anybody else. I can't serve my fiance at the time, now my wife. I can't be a good son. I can't be a good friend. I can't be a good coworker because my mind's not there, right? Like that's kind of like The Rock says, it's his anchor, you know, and that's like, I got to set that tone for myself, whether it be if I have to do it in the morning or if I have to do it in the afternoon. Like I know that there's going to be a chunk of time where I can just take for myself to work on myself. And I don't like, yeah, it's cool to be in shape and have abs and be muscular and all, but I don't do it for none of that stuff. Like being healthy is all great. It's more for like my mindset. And I don't really care about a whole lot. Like I'm way more enjoyable if I did what I was supposed to do physically, opposed to if I didn't, right? Like you'd be like, oh man, this workout's about to be really hard. Well, it's also really hard if you don't get that workout in. Like that feels even worse to me. So like just before we get on here, I did 10 miles and climbed 3,000 feet 30 minutes ago. So I'm good now. Like we can podcast all night. I told you I had an hour, but honestly, like I'm chilling. Everything's done that I need to have done today, and we're off to the races. So I always try to take care of myself first so I can be a good husband, a good dog dad, a good coworker, friend, give a good interview, things like that. So I've always been huge on that, man.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will say, if they have a lot of obligations in their life, whether it's family, whether it's a career and everything like that, it's typically their physical and their mental well-being, they usually put it on the back burner compared to like all those other things. And, I always say that your body is the vessel with which you will do all things. And if you have it running optimally, then all those other areas that you say that you're putting so much work into, it's going to be a lot more efficient. You're going to be a lot more effective. You're going to have focus. You're going to have vitality to go do all those things. But yeah, so I do agree with you that it's just, some people would say that it's selfish if you need to take time for yourself to go do those things, but it's just, it pays dividends in the end, because when you come back from, taking care of yourself, it's just, you are just far more effective in all of those areas.
Yeah, and that was another thing. Like I remember when I got accepted, like for my first police job in Nashville, and you had to prepare for the academy. Everyone's saying how hard this academy is, and it's paramilitary. You gotta bick your head and the whole 9 yards, and you're gonna get yelled and screamed at, and so many people they're gonna quit, which they did. And there's tons of physical training, but there's also like a lot of classwork. I was like, man, I got to be able to do this physical training and not have it be anything for me, right? Like I need to be able to breeze through this, knowing that I'm not the best student. I don't care if we're studying, biology, if we're studying mathematics, it doesn't matter. Like I really, really have to work hard. So being on top of everything physically, I could put all my effort towards like studying the law and all the exams that we had to take. So I always say like you don't have to get in shape if you never get out of it. So I like ever since I was 16, I've always maintained like some type of really good shape, because I know that that can be a strong suit of mine, because I know that I'm not the best student. I know that I have to work really hard for things that I want and things that I have. So I've always just kind of prided myself on, being physically fit enough to focus on other areas so I can give that more of my time.
So kind of going through the academy like that is just what were kind of some of your observations of some of the other I'm not sure what they're referred to in the academy, if they're candidates or cadets or whatever they're typical, or students, however they're typically referred to. But it's just, what do you think with some of your observations of those who were there just to kind of meet the status quo, like just making it to the minimum requirements to pass like the physical fitness test versus striving for excellence and just smashing it and things like that? What was kind of sort of your observes? And maybe this is just kind of just a quick look into like societal reflections here a little bit.
Yeah, so they used to call us trainees in this specific academy. There was probably, to be honest, I think we started with 50, like close to 60, 57, 58, 60, close to that. And we graduated like low 20s. So we had a pretty good dropout rate. And there was probably a handful of guys like me that were in really, really good physical shape coming in. Like you could just tell by looking at them that they'd be able to run, they'd be able to hang, but they were also really good students too. I wasn't a good student. I ended up failing an exam in the police academy. And if you fail more than one exam, like you're out. It's like, well, that sucks because I moved all the way down here and now I don't have a job. Right. So I like some of my good friends were really not in shape at all. And I'd be looking at them, we're running. I'm like, this is not the place or the time to get in shape. Like you should have freaking came prepared. But at the same time, these kids were brainiacs too. So like their hard part was the running and shit like that, the studying, all that. They didn't have to worry about it. I was the opposite. But they stuck with it and they didn't quit and they got in better shape and helped me study, and it ended up all working out. But there was only a handful of people that were really, really well rounded. And I'm talking like 4 or 5 guys, and that was clear as day.
Yeah, you got to maintain that versatility for a job like that, for sure. So kind of getting there and getting yourself situated, and again, starting off as a law enforcement officer, after your move, it your time is pretty well wound up there. But of course, you still are able to get out there a little bit, explore your new home state. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, you are a backcountry bow hunter as well. So just what are some of your early memories after moving there of just like places you got to see in the state and some of the stuff that you got to go do?
Yeah, so this past season was kind of my like first official season as like elk hunting and stuff like that. And I did that the majority of that by myself. And it was, I mean, everything's different, right? Like the country, the terrain, the long days by yourself. I mean, I remember living in Nashville. I found a place to hunt, and I tell my wife, "Yeah, I'm gonna go out in the morning," and she'd be like, "Okay." Well, I mean, I'd be back by the time she woke up half the time. Now, like if I'm gonna go hunting, I'll see you in 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 days from now. So now that I can't just like bomb out and go get a quick hunt in. Now it's more of a trip with a lot of planning, a lot of strategy, a lot of work, a lot of miles. Beautiful country, but I mean, it's just work. I don't really know how else to explain it, but I love that because I always tell these guys because I've had an opportunity to hunt with quite a few experienced people out here that have born and raised here. They've been doing this their whole life. These mountains are their playgrounds. And I met this guy, and we went out the first year I moved here, and I was still a non-resident. And we're hiking, and we were just scouting. We're hiking, and we're like 10 miles into the backcountry. And then I'm thinking, I'm like, I think he's trying to break me off. I was like, he doesn't really know me that well, but like, I can do this for a while. And I told him, I was like, I don't know how far you plan on going, dude, but like, you're not going to out hike me. Like, this is like cardio and endurance is something that I hang my hat on, dude. So like, I don't know what you're trying to prove to see if I can hang with you, but like, I promise you that I can. And he's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, we ended up putting on like over 20 miles that day. And then the next day we did it again. And he's like, I'm impressed. I was like, I'm telling you, man, you're not going to out train me or out hike me out here. So that's been one thing. I can't imagine hunting out here, not being in any type of physical shape. It's so hard to get on animals. It's so hard to stay out there for multiple days at a time. I can't imagine doing that, not at your like peak physical condition, just because I mean, if you're going to chase after elk, I think you have to be in at least some sort of physical shape to be able to just stay out there. You're not going to run into them on day one, kill and go home. Some guys do it, but that's never been how I go about business. I always really, really have to earn it.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar mindset when I did my through hike across Michigan, about a year and a half ago now. And that's just one of the things that you learn pretty quickly about Mother Nature is that there's very little that she cares about with you. She doesn't care, what you look like, what color your skin is, how much money you have, or what your status is in society. The only thing she cares about is how tough you are. And she's going to test you in so many ways, whether it's the terrain, the altitude, the wildlife, the weather, and other elements out there too. So it's just, that's the only thing that matters out there in the mountain is just how tough you are, both physically and mentally, to persevere.
Yeah, and you have to be smart, right? Like you have to know how to navigate. And 3 years ago, I had no like I just started using Onyx like 2 or 3 years ago. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I'm used to hunting 100, 200 acre little plot. And I mean, I got all my spots set up. I walk in the dark, come out in the dark. Like it's no big deal. Like you travel that same path all the time. Well, now 9 times out of 10, I go out, I'm going to somewhere new every time where I've never set foot there. Yeah. So you have to be able to learn how to use a map. You have to be able to learn how to filter water. You have to be able to learn how to like actually like construct your pack that you're going to have out in the mountains for 4 or 5 days. Like there's a certain way to pack it. There's certain things that you need. So all that's been totally new to me. And that's why, going out solo last year, I think really kind of sped up that learning process because there was quite a few things that I messed up on where I'm like, ooh, we're not going to do that again. But also being able to go out with like my friend Peyton He used to guide on the west side of Montana, like in the Bob Marshall and in the Swan. And like I'm learning so much from guys like that, just like the mountain man like aspect of things, right? Like really learning how to navigate and just survive out there, like what to do in a rainstorm, what to do if you get overheated, stuff like that, which I've never had to deal with in my life.
Yeah, I like that you're kind of a student of the old ways like that. You know, you talk about using a map and a compass, and it's kind of a really good feeling to know that you have that self-reliance. When I was living in England, I don't know if I told you about that, but I went to grad school in the UK. And shortly after I finished my program there, I had a buddy of mine from Germany visit me up in Scotland. We met there and we did a 5-day overland trek from this small little town called Dalwhinnie. And then we ended in Ben Nevis in the city of Fort William, which Ben Nevis is Britain's highest mountain. And then, of course, we did a summit bit of the mountain. But yeah, that whole 5 days overland, yeah, it was all with just a topo map and a compass. And of course, I was glad that my friend, had done that workup himself, where he knew how to also navigate using a topo map and a compass. But that was just kind of a good feeling, because it's like, well, for one, we couldn't even get signal like out where we were to save our lives anyway. So it's like, yeah, there's only one way out, and it's through. And so that was it's kind of a cool feeling, just kind of tapping into the old ways like that. And because I think we become way too reliant on our technology, which is great, because I think that in those types of situations, like with you hunting, if you can gain a technological and a tactical advantage on your quarry, then awesome. But at the same time, God forbid it fails in some way, well, at least you have these skills to fall back onto, so you can continue forward.
Yeah, 100%. I think the best way to do those types of things is to just get out. Like it's fun to talk about it. It's fun to think about it. It's fun to dream about it, fun to plan about it. But you actually physically have to get out and do said thing, like take a 5-day backpacking trip, or, take that 7-day hunt by yourself, because you're going to figure out some things, not only about how to operate out there, but you're going to figure out a lot about yourself. There's a lot of time to think when you don't have cell phone service. There's a lot of time for self-reflection. That's why I run these ultra marathons, because you can figure out so much about yourself in, say, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours of just pure pain and suffering. You live lifetimes in those hours, and you really grow an appreciation for the simple things in life, like a hot shower, a warm meal, a kiss from your wife, turning on the ball game, just shit like that does not exist when you're in the backcountry. So you really just have to get out and just throw yourself into the fire. And I think that's the best way to learn. That's kind of how I end up doing a lot of things throughout my life, is just, I think about it for a little bit, but my mind has this weird thing where, like, as soon as I get a thought in my mind, if I don't do it, then I'm like, you bitched out, or like, oh, like, why aren't you doing that? You're putting this off. As soon as it comes into my mind, I'm just like, God damn it. Like, I have to do this now. And I do. And sometimes it works out great, and other times it don't. But I've been fortunate enough for the majority of the things that I've tried that have been kind of, on the bubble, that they've worked out. But you have to take those chances in life, and I'm big on that.
Well, I want to go to this point that you just brought up here, and well, of course, we both kind of were sort of just talking about was just how in a lot of the areas that we get to, we don't even have like cell reception, and then how we're actually kind of sort of like relieved about the fact that we don't actually have the means to check our phones right now. And, because I feel with technology, again, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's just like, lots of great things can come as a result with these mega computers that we have in our pockets that are more powerful than the computers that put people on the moon. But you can really just dive down really deep in the rabbit hole of things like social media, these algorithms that are just trying to show us what they think that they want us to see. And of course, like all these social media platforms hire the best behavioral psychologists in the world to try to keep us like on their platforms for as long as possible. But, I was just kind of thinking about this. I just wrapped up a hunt with Colin Cottrell in High Caliber Hunts just this past weekend. And the rule that he set in place for the weekend was no phones. And so just as we're rolling up to the ranch where we were doing our hunt, I turned the thing off, and that was that. And then and for anyone that who I thought might need to get in touch with me, I'm just like, look, if you message me or try to call me, I'm not going to get it until Sunday once I get back from this hunt. And that's just the way it's going to be. And, it's just, I'm sitting in the blind, just patiently waiting for some hogs to show up. And it was just nice to, just not even really think about it. I was just tuned in and dialed in to the task at hand. And that was hopefully to bring home some bacon, literally, And so it was just really nice just being out there, breathing in that fresh air, being far, far away and just in the blind by myself and just, enjoying the moment without being constantly bombarded with my phone just binging like every 5 seconds or just wanting that temptation to, scroll through Instagram or whatever. And it was actually, and this is how I kind of knew that I was really diving a little bit too deep into my phone usage, Tyler, was that during the first couple hours after arriving at the ranch, I'm still patting my pocket, like wanting to reach for it. And even though I had kept it in the bedroom, I have that kinetic habit now of reaching for my pocket to try to pull out my phone. But then, of course, realizing that it wasn't there. And fortunately, I kind of shook that off where I was just able to, again, just focus on the hunt, focus on, the conversations with these men that were also part of the camp. But it's just, my gosh, man, it's just, we've gotten so wrapped up in these things. And it's just, but I think being out in the wild, it's almost kind of like that's where we're meant to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. And that's one of the main reasons, I want to go out and kill a big elk or, kill a world-class bear that unfortunately I missed this past weekend. And all that is great, man. It really is. But I love when I'm heading to wherever I'm going and I look at my phone and all of a sudden there's no bars and it just says no service. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is where you're supposed to be. Yeah, I want to hunt. I want to hunt here. This is perfect. Not because I don't want to check in with my wife or not because, I don't want to make a post or something like that, but it's just such a relieving feeling where you're totally present, right? Like how disrespectful would it be if you just saw me keep looking down right now, checking my phone, right? I'm 100% here with you as you are with me. And that's how I want to be when I take the time and I take the money and I take those days away from my wife. I want to be fully immersed in the wild and have these animals in this beautiful country have 100% of my attention. And perfect example today, I wake up a little bit later than I would have liked, but I've had 3 really hard training days. So I think I needed the sleep. And I try when I wake up not to check my phone for at least 30 minutes to an hour. And some days it works out. Some days it didn't. Or some days it doesn't. And today was one of those days where it just didn't work out. I am literally getting out of bed and my 2 feet are on the ground. And I'm still sitting on the bed and my phone's right there. And I tap my phone and I have a text message from a buddy. Terrible news regarding him. He's just the worst news that you could probably get from a friend, something that he's going through. And I run out of the bedroom and I'm like, Morgan, have you talked to said friend's girlfriend? Because they're friends as well. And she's like, no, I haven't. And I was like, this individual just sent me this text, what the hell? And then in an hour after that, I get a phone call from another friend with the worst news that you could possibly get on top of the news that I just got. So within a span of an hour of my day, 2 of my really good friends were really going through some hard times. And I'm like, man, I was happy that I could be there for them. But at the same time, it's nice to take these trips and not have to worry about this freaking thing at all. I'll get to talk to them and I get to talk to them. They're both going to be okay. Thank God. But, waking up to stuff like that is terrible. So if you can have the time to go out on these trips and not have any communication, it's just a breath of fresh air, really.
Yeah. And I think that's what kind of draws me to nature as well. And, I like traveling to cities. I'm pretty good with urban based travel and some of the cities that I've been to around the world, like London is probably my favorite city to visit. But there is a lot of hustle and bustle. And I go to some of these sites around the world, whether it's the Burj Khalifa in Dubai or the Tower of London and things like that. And I'm looking around at some of the other people who are visiting these places, and I can just tell that they're not quite fully present like with what it is that they're actually there to do. It's like they'll just go up to something that they think looks cool, or maybe it might be something significant, just get their picture taken with it really quick and then just move on. It's just like, okay, so you're there just to try to generate a social media post. And I know that kind of sounds like I'm putting that down. I mean, obviously, with much of my content being centered around, travel and adventure and experiencing things, I mean, it's just, of course, I want to create content for myself too, but it's just, I want to try to make it a little bit more immersive than that. It's like, if I'm going to take the time, if I'm going to invest the time and the money and resources to go to these places, I want to try to take as much of them as I can, not just zip through them really quick, trying to get as many photos as possible or anything like that. And so it's just, so I think that's why I kind of like getting out in nature. And just going back to just this past hunting camp weekend, is just the views that we had at this ranch were just absolutely incredible. Everything from the wildlife to just the landscape, just nothing but wilderness as far as the eye can see. And and again, I my brain was still kind of thinking, oh, this would make for such a cool photo to share on Instagram or whatever. But I'm just like, you know what? This is for me right now. And this is for me and also the men that I'm out here hunting with. This is for us. It's just we're out here. We put in the work to get this hunt going. And Colin worked really hard to schedule this camp. And it's just, this is for us. And so at that point, I had no issues whatsoever not having my phone with me to want to snap away, and take all these photos. So again, it just goes back to just being present in the moment, and actually just, if you're going to make it a point to get out there and see the world and experience the world. Don't just zip through it.
Yeah, I agree. But I have something to bounce off you regarding what you just said. I have a little bit of a cheat code for you. Because obviously, like, if you have your phone and you're taking pictures and you're taking videos, that can easily be like, just let me post this real quick, right? And then you get sidetracked. Someone posts something that you're interested in. Next thing you know, you're down a rabbit hole. You've had your head down for 10 minutes, and then you look up and you're like, oh yeah, I'm in Dubai or whatever, right? You need to soak this in. Carry an actual camera. Carry an actual camera where you can still take your pictures, you can still take your videos, and then when you're done, just put it back around your neck or throw it back in your bag, and that's that. Like, all you can do is physically just take the picture and then look at it. You can't post it from your DSLR, your Sony, or your Canon or whatever. So that's what I do. Like, whenever I go out hunting, I don't really take any pictures off my phone because, one, I can't do anything with them anyways, and plus I get a higher quality photo with my actual camera. So I'm always like, I'm not alone. Like, I got my camera and I can take some videos and take some, I can do an interview, because with what we do, right, and running podcasts and things like that, you do need content, you do need things to share, you want to show people where you've been and things like that. So I found that taking an actual camera helps with that. So you can just take it, throw it back in the bag, and then you're good, and you ain't got to worry about your phone.
Yeah, right on, man. So really quick, I want to talk about this bear that you said that you missed, or this epic bear so what happened there, man? Because I kind of need to know now. I didn't realize that you were out trying to hunt bear recently.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of stories, so I'll just give you the real heartbreaker. And I'm actually supposed to do a podcast with Peyton, the guy that I went out hunting with. We're supposed to do one tomorrow, and hopefully that's the last time I have to talk about it, because it's just driving me freaking crazy. We already have dates set. I'm going back at the end of the month, and we're gonna try to finish this deal. But long story short, we had first day out, and we put on nothing crazy, 7 miles, and I wasn't really feeling that good. My stomach was kind of jacked up. I might have been a little bit dehydrated or whatever as we were hiking out, and we're just driving these old logging roads, and we have an hour until dark, and we're kind of hunting our way out, sort of, kind of, and it's big country out there. And I won't lie to you, dude. I literally told Peyton, I said, yeah, man, I might be done hiking today, unless it's a great opportunity. I'm not feeling I feel like shit. And not a second goes by, and he looks out his window and he goes, hang on a minute. And I'm like, or not, because I'm like, oh, he saw a bear. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not done hiking. And he throws it in reverse and he goes, oh my God, it's a giant. Grab the gun. And I'm like, okay. So I hop out, and I didn't even need to glass this bear. He was so big. And Peyton yells out the yardage. He's like 320, 25 yards or whatever it was. And as I'm grabbing the rifle out of the back, I'm like laughing to myself. I'm like, oh my God, like I can make that shot. Like, no problem. I was like, we're going to kill this bear. Holy shit. So I kind of make a play off the side of the road, sort of, kind of, and get behind the rifle. And this bear is 320 yards down in this valley, like straight down in this valley, in the only like clear cut that is basically available down there. And he is straight on, like looking at me. Like, he's not looking at us from up top, but he's looking in our direction, but he's square as you and I are right now. And Peyton's just yelling at me. I mean, for context, he's a former Navy SEAL sniper. And he's like, take the shot. I'm like, dude, I'm not taking a frontal. Like, I'm not you. I'm not taking a frontal on this bear at 320 yards with your gun. Like, I just need this bear to do anything besides what he's doing, which is standing straight on to me. Turn your head, go sideways, turn around, like just do anything else besides what you're doing. He's like, can you get a better angle? So I run down to the left and the trees are so thick. I'm like, no. So I run back to the initial spot, and I'll be damned, Josh, if this bear doesn't walk 10 yards forward, turn broadside, and sit down, saying, take me. And I'm like, I am laughing at this point, just laughing in my mind, like, okay, perfect. Well, take the shot, Tyler. Got it. Boom. And I'm like, oh my God, I dropped him. Like, I smoked him. And I can't hear anything because, of course, the gun has my entire brain rattled. It's a 300 Win Mag. And Peyton's yelling at me, reload, you missed him. I'm like, dude, there's no way I freaking missed this bear. Like, I thought I dumped him. So by the time I reload and all this other stuff, the bear stands up and just kind of jogs away. And I'm like, dude, there's no way I missed this bear. He's like, I've spent a lot of time like spotting in the military and just guiding, and like, he's got glass on the bear. And he's like, dude, your bullet didn't come within 200 yards of this bear. Like, I don't know if you missed high, left, low, right, whatever. I'm like, there's just no way. Well, come to find out, line of sight. I'm on this little ridge, and below it, like 20 yards, is another ridge that kind of jets out. My bullet hits 20 yards in front of me on this second ridge. I had a clear sight through the scope, but the barrel was not clear of this lower ridge. And it sucks because I firmly believe if that ridge wasn't there, that's an incredible bear to have. And that's a dead bear. But I don't practice shots like that. I've never taken a shot at that crazy of an angle, and it just didn't work out. But the funniest thing is that Peyton is guided and he knows bears, and he's really good at it. And when I got behind the rifle, he's like, is that a grizzly? And I was like, no, it's the biggest black bear in the valley. So if he asked me if it's a grizzly, that should give you context to how big this bear was. It was a bear of a lifetime. And we kind of came to the conclusion that, like, it's probably a good thing that wasn't your first bear. Because that's probably how we would have opened this podcast, because you wouldn't have been able to talk to me because my head would have been so big. But we'll figure it out. We'll keep working. But that kind of goes back, Josh, to what I was saying, is that I really have to work for things, right? Like a 7-mile hike one day on the first day, world-class black bear, public land, Northwest Montana. It just doesn't usually pan out like that for me. Like, I have to learn the hard way, and I've had to learn the hard way throughout my entire life. And it's just not time yet. And that's what we've come to terms with. And it wasn't time the next day either, but I'm not going to tell that story.
Well, I mean, in the end, though, you just have to keep going back out, and you have to just keep going for it. That's what it takes. Yeah, because I had a similar story. Actually, I'll kind of sort of, take the load off you, and by telling you my miss that I had just this past weekend. So, we went out hunting on Friday, the day that we arrived at the ranch. And at first I paired up with one of the other hunters just so I can kind of sort of get a feel. Like it been, my last hunt was about a year ago, and that was a thermal night hunt, but this was like hunting in a blind. So, setup was a little bit different. So I wanted to at least shadow someone with a little bit more experience first. And we were sitting in the blind, the feeder goes off. And then within about the first 10 minutes of the feeder going off, here comes this big black boar, just a massive pig comes out. And already we could just tell he was skittish. Like, he knew that we were there. He would take a couple steps forward, just dart his head right in our direction. And same deal, maybe put his head down, pick up a couple pieces of corn with his mouth, and then right away look right at us again. So he was already skittish. And so therefore, I ended up rushing my shot, and my round just went right over top him, and he took off, and he was gone. And I just should have known better. I should have, just calmed down a little bit. I probably, should have just took a few deeper breaths, slowed my heart rate down. But I threw the shot, man, and I freaking missed this massive pig within like the first 10 minutes of the feeder going off. And so, but I still went out the next morning because it's like, all right, I want another crack at this thing. I mean, obviously if I let myself get defeated with this miss and just say, oh man, I'm never going back out there again, how could I have missed that shot? But, then I'm sitting in the blind the next morning. I'm much more calm and collected. I kind of have more of a routine in place as far as setting my blind up and making sure I get myself situated, set up my firing platform and what have you. And but even still, there was more disappointments later that night, on Saturday night. Towards it was starting to get dark. The feeder had already been off for like about 2 hours. Some whitetail showed up, but of course I wasn't going to shoot the whitetail at this time. But then just as the sun was starting to set, I see about 10 piglets come out of the woods, start eating the corn, followed by this huge sow. And I'm like, oh, she's mine, And then same deal though, all these little piglets and mama pig, they were very skittish too. And, maybe eating up a few pieces of corn and then looking in my direction. But then finally I get a broadside open shot of this sow, and I got my glass on her. And then one of the other hunters somewhere on the ranch takes 3 shots consecutively with his AR and scared this whole batch of pigs back into the woods. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I had her in my sights. And then of course I couldn't get mad at the other hunters because they were just doing what we went there for. But, it's just, and even still with another defeat like that, the next morning we went out again, and I'm like, I'm going back out there. It's like, I want something, but at the weekend ended with me not getting anything. And that's just the way hunting goes. Sometimes it's just the animals have a say in this too. But, just, this is really just a roundabout way of me saying that, you're going to face defeats, you're going to face setbacks, but you just got to get back out there again. That's all there really is to it.
That's all there is to it, man. And I'll just sum it up really quick. The next day we went out and I shot a bear and we couldn't find it. Like freaking just the worst weekend of hunting I've ever had, right? Just like heartbreak after heartbreak. And then I drive home Sunday, and Sunday night I'm texting Peyton and we're like, yeah, you need to come back out. And I'm like, I need to come back out. So like you can either fold and get butthurt, or you can work harder and try to reevaluate and stay getting after it. Cause I love this stuff, right? Like I am absolutely obsessed with archery elk hunting. I could give 2 damns about that right now. I want to get a bear so bad after being so close on back-to-back days. Like that's all I can think about is just going back out there and trying to get a bear. The hell with elk hunting. Like I do not care. Can't hunt elk right now anyways, but still like during elk season, I'm going to be looking for a bear. Like if I don't get this done here in a couple of weeks, but yeah, I mean, you have option A and option B. Option A is to, keep at it and keep going and just get better at your craft and learn what you did wrong and not make that mistake again. Or option B, you can fold and just call it quits and throw your hat in. And I don't like taking option B. I very rarely ever take option B with anything that I do. So
yeah, it doesn't feel very good at all. Like that shit sticks with you for sure. So it's like more so than, in this case, missing the shot. Like I said, if I just felt defeated and just like closed my hunting journey for good at that point, that would feel a lot worse than, just, trying to learn from that miss that I got. So yeah, man, for sure. So, we're kind of going to go back and forth in your timeline here now that I'm trying to fill in some of the gaps from your story. But, you kind of mentioned getting out there in the Montana mountains and, of course, training for your law enforcement career, as we talked about. This involved like a lot of endurance training. And, of course, like ultra running has been a part of your life for a while now. So I guess how did you kind of sort of get into that aspect of your life and getting out and running these long distances and ultra endurance racing?
It's funny, man. You might have to. Are you good with editing audio? Because I actually wrote like a little bit of a blog in 2021 telling the story about like why I chose to start running.
Hmm.
And I can pull that up here really quick for you if you let me, if you want to edit this out real quick.
Sure.
And I can go right through it because I actually read it like yesterday, and I was like, oh wow, this is actually really good, and it explains it very well. So if the listener will just bear with us really quick, I'm gonna pull this up, and
And and actually, I don't think I will edit out this part because this is just part of our conversation, man. So it's
I
just,
love that.
let's just keep it real. You know what I mean, man?
Yeah, I'm all about it. Just give me 1 second, guys. Um,
Yeah, and speaking of which, I didn't realize you were blogging about some of your adventures too. So that's pretty
yeah,
cool.
I don't do it often. I used to do it a lot more, but it's just kind of like a little outlet for me that I can just kind of, instead of picking up a book at night or watching a Netflix show that isn't going to serve any purpose. I used to write some stuff just on like random Google Docs. So
Yeah, unless if you're
I,
watching The Terminal List on Amazon Prime.
speaking of that, we need to touch on that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll talk about that before we wrap up our conversation for sure. Give everyone. Well, of course, your episode with said guest that we're talking about will have come out before this episode, but it'll be something for our listeners and our viewers to fall back on and catch on to as well. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Bear with me here. We're working on it. I think I wrote it in 2021.
and then really quick, some of the stickers on your laptop are visible. Is one says motivation. Is that Tony Montana from Scarface? That's
Yeah, that used to be an old like kind of like hip little clothing store in downtown Ann Arbor.
oh.
They used to call it Motivation. It was a pretty cool store.
Okay.
And then
All right.
a
Yeah.
buddy.
And then something that I see next to it though, I can see the outline of Lake Superior, and then something jug, like mud jug, maybe. I don't know. I can't. can't
Yeah,
read.
that's those are spitter. That's a spitting like a spittoon company.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's another bad habit that I have, but it is what it is.
As I'm sure our viewers have caught on to by now. So
Yeah,
which
unfortunately.
for anyone just listening to the regular podcast, keep in mind that all my guest interviews are on the All Around Adventure YouTube channel, and sometimes you can get like a lot more if you want to check out the video, see what I look like, see what my guest looks like, and sometimes my guests like to do a little bit of show and tell. So yeah, hop on the All Around Adventure YouTube channel and check those out. Shameless plug.
I love that. I might not be able to find it, dude. Of course, I had it like yesterday and I wasn't even looking for it, but excuse me. Bad podcasting here on my behalf, bro. I'm sorry.
We're always learning. I think because like you've been doing podcasting like for what about a year and a half now, something like that.
Yeah, pretty much exactly. Yep.
Okay, and of course a little bit of transitionary phase too. You're now the Nock Performance podcast, and what were you before that? Knock on podcast, something
It
like that.
was it was the Montana Knox podcast. Yep.
Mm, okay. All right. Yeah. Which, of course, so now you're kind of sort of expanding your reach, so to speak. And, you've had a lot of cool guests recently. I remember I really liked your episode with Justin True and hearing his story about when he was in Egypt and everything. I'm going to have to try and see if I can get him on my show because, yeah, that story was wild. And I'm actually listening to that. I'm glad it ended with him safely being able to return home because that was a dicey situation.
I tell you what, it really was, man. And he's such an awesome guy, and just I really enjoyed getting to speak to him. And he lives out in the UK, so we had to do that podcast. It was like 7 a.m. my time and like 2 p.m. his time, but it was really fun. And I got hooked up with him through Hector Rodriguez, who would also be a excellent guest for you too. Those guys are savages, man. I love talking to people that do hard things, and it's just really, really fun conversations.
Yeah, definitely. And Yeah, that's always the challenge, especially with having a travel and adventure podcast. Is a lot of my guests are in many different places around the world, and with working a full-time job like I do now, that usually it does involve me having to get up well before the sun comes up, to talk to guests who may be like 5 or even many hours ahead of me. I actually had a guest that I talked to who lives in Dubai, and she was like, I think 8 hours ahead of me, something along those lines. And so lining that up, especially if when I travel for work, sometimes I'm shifting time zones myself. And so then I got to compensate for that just as well, too. So, but, we make it work as best we can. So how's the search coming?
Good. I think I got it.
Cool.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, so I wrote this. I found it on my phone actually. Thank you guys for bearing with us, but it'll just sum up your question really good. So like how I got into this, and I put this was dated March 30th of 21, and I titled it Why I Run. And this is as raw as it gets, man. Who knows what was going on in my mind over 2 years ago, but here we go. I have no idea how to even start this thing, but here goes the old college try. I've always sucked at running. And to be honest, I still don't even consider myself a true runner. It was spring of 2019, and I needed a challenge. I've always enjoyed getting in the gym and taking care of myself, but I wanted a true purpose. I was working out for the sole purpose of just trying to stay in shape and fill the sleeves. Total bro, right? Lame. Something was missing. What can I do to challenge myself? Well, running completely sucks, so maybe I'll go for a jog. 2 miles and I was toast. I finished and thought, damn, that sucked. Let's do it again tomorrow. So I did. Then again, the next day after that, I logged some miles. Let's see. I logged some miles for the next few weeks, then came up with what I thought was humanly impossible at the time. I'm going to run a marathon. The next day, I called my friend Joe and told him I was running a marathon on November 9th. I knew he liked to run a little bit, but I could tell he was a bit surprised when I told him. I've expressed my dislike for running in the past, so to say he was a bit taken back was probably accurate. I basically gave him no option but to sign up and join me. That's called a spot check for those of you who don't know. I chose Vegas because, well, it's Vegas. I figured that might help convince him a bit. My plan worked. We were both in, and I had roughly 5 months to train. Let me tell you, I needed every day to train and try to improve my endurance. Keep in mind, a few weeks ago before I signed up, I was struggling to get through a 5K. And that's what I have. And then I have some other running stories on here. But to sum up your question, it was basically because it sucked. Running sucks, right? And I think I need that in my life. And that's why I still do it. I still don't enjoy it. I was dreading the run that I went on today, but it needs to happen. And that's why it happened. I think it's important to do things that are physically challenging in your life, because when life actually really gets physically challenging, you have something to bounce back on, and you can kind of reach back into your tote of terrible things that you've had to do. And you can be like, oh, this isn't as bad as this one thing that I did, or that ultra marathon that I ran, or, when I was 20 miles back in the backcountry and I ran out of water. You can always kind of reach back and take those things and apply it to what's really going on in life. So to answer your question, that's kind of why I started running. I needed a little bit more of a purpose, and it's been pretty consistent ever since I wrote that. So
Yeah, it seems like we have a tendency, and it even seems more so in this day and age, is that we always want to retreat to things that feel comfortable, right? And that's why, of course, Netflix and all these other streaming platforms, so many people are subscribed to them. And then, of course, just conveniences to get meals, just push a few buttons on your phone, someone's bringing a ready-made meal to your door, right? Where it's like, you don't... Like hunting is something that, we do, and a lot of us actually pay a lot of money and invest a lot of time to go do, but it's not absolutely necessary in this day and age to acquire sustenance like it was hundreds and thousands of years ago. But it's just like when we always constantly retreat to comfort, it's just, as you mentioned, life will inevitably throw something our way. It always does. And, but I think, if we go out and we seek these challenges, whether it's in, the physical sense or just, whatever it is that it looks like to get out of our comfort zone, I always talk about we're tipping the scales in our favor. When I say on one side of the scale, we have all the hard things that we've done, we make that side very, very heavy. When something falls on the other scale, like a challenge that we're facing in the present, if it's not heavier than what we've already stacked, then it's not that big of a deal. We just deal with it just fine because we've made it a point to always go out and do hard things.
Yeah, and I think that doing hard things is getting pretty popular these days. Like people are really buying into that, just based off of, people that they're seeing online. Like you have the Goggins thing, and I like quoted him in that. I don't know if anybody caught on to that little spiel that I just said, but I called it a spot check. Well, Goggins talked about that years ago, when he was running with Cam Haynes, and Cam was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in town." And Goggins is like, "All right, well, I just got spot checked." So I think I wouldn't call it lucky, but just more in tune with some of these people. Like I remember following Goggins when he had like 15,000 followers. Nobody, like before Joe Rogan, like nobody knew who this dude was. Now he's got like 5 million. So I've kind of been, you know, taking what he's been saying and applying it to my own life. And like now everybody wants to do cold plunges, right? I have pictures on my phone from me doing cold plunges in January of 2020 before anybody even found out what the heck the benefits were and all this other stuff. So I wouldn't call it lucky. I think it might just be like a little bit more in tune with some things that I've wanted to implement into my life in the earlier years. And I've still kept that. And now it's kind of funny to see how everybody's really catching on and really trying to like be hard and do hard things. And I'm stoked about it. But there's levels to it, right? Like there's levels to this game. People have been doing these things for years, such as myself, not to toot my own horn or anything, but like you have to do these things for years before you can really start talking about it. Like you have to live this particular life if you're going to be on the internet talking all of this game and stuff like that. So I laugh when I see it sometimes, but at the end of the day, if people are truly getting after it and really living that life, then they have my automatic respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Those who are on the path, it's just that's what it is. And, I think a lot of people may be reluctant to kind of venture out like into those spaces, maybe because they're worried about how they may be perceived. I always like to use the analogy with like martial arts and jujitsu and everything like that. They're worried about getting on the mats because, they're worried about just like those with more experience will just quickly choke them out or quickly get them in some other submission. But, and so they're worried like how they may be perceived if they're show up and they're more or less fodder, I guess I'll say, for lack of better terms at the moment. But the thing is just what I've found is that if I ever do get criticism, whether it's like for me wanting to get into like endurance racing, I told you I'm getting ready for a Spartan Ultra here in October, or if I'm getting on the jujitsu mats after like many after like a long absence, it's just I never get criticism from anyone who's doing any of those things. If I ever do get criticism, it always seems to come from those who aren't doing what I'm doing. And I know why I'm not getting criticism from those who are in those spaces, because they've been there, done that. Like they know what it feels like to be a beginner, and they were probably nervous themselves trying to get in there and get started. But it's just, so I just say, get started with these things. It's just like those who are doing these things, they'll help you along however they can, but they're not going to try to discourage you from doing it. If you're going to get discouragement from doing it, it's going to come from people who aren't doing it themselves.
Yeah, and that's like one of the best things that can happen to you, right? If you're thinking about signing up for jujitsu, like go get choked out on your second day. Like that is the best thing, because you might think you're hot shit and you go in there and get straight humbled, right? Like I've been humbled in races, like bodied by like 50-year-old women that beat me by like 4 hours. And I walk into this race like I'm about to, like, I never am trying to win these things, but I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna put up a good time, like, have many goals, and that when shit hits the fan, like you just have to adjust, right? So you have to put yourself out there. Like I was so embarrassed when I missed this bear with my buddy, like freaking former Navy SEAL sniper, freaking guided out there for 4 years, like true, like look up to the guy, like he's my friend, but like I'm not afraid to say, like, I'm trying to learn from this dude, and for me to go out there and get on a sweet bear and drop the ball, I'm like kind of half embarrassed. And he's like, dude, that's hunting. He's like, you never practiced a shot like that. Like, because he knows that I'm trying and I'm putting forth the effort, right? Like, you don't just come out to Montana and just start stacking tags. It's just not reality. And let me tell you, I'm freaking learning the hard way, but that's just my journey and it is what it is. And I'm not afraid to say it on here, and I got to freaking say it on my show. And I think it's important because everybody wants to see the wins, right? It's so easy to be like, wow, Josh, you hiked across the state, and wow, Josh, like you have a 6-figure job, and wow, Josh, like you're so great. You called me with some personal information that you probably wouldn't want a whole lot of people to say, but you're vulnerable, right? And I've been where you were when you called me the other day. That's important. Like, you have to be able to be vulnerable. You have to be able to put yourself out there and, potentially fail, but you have to learn from that. And it's so easy to show all the good things. Like, people need to hear the struggles because it happens to everybody, and they just need it's so important to grow. And I think I'm doing a lot of growing right now because I'm jacking up a lot of stuff, which is good. It's good. It sucks, but I think it's going to make me a better overall person and a better hunter. And, just, I think overall it's going to be a good thing that I'm going through some of these tough times.
Yeah. And, I just kind of want to expand on that point a little bit, just kind of talking about just fostering these connections with people too. Again, when we go out and do hard things and we go shoulder to shoulder with people who are kind of doing those hard things along with us, it does really create those good, powerful connections and everything. And yeah, and that's why I was so glad, let me tell you, Tyler, that Colin had scheduled his high caliber hunting camp on that weekend, because just like a week prior, yeah, you're absolutely right, I went through like a pretty tough breakup. And it was, this is going to be the most embarrassing thing that I'll probably say, but it's and I won't say the person's name on here because she doesn't have a social media presence, and I want her to remain private. But I got dumped literally the day after I asked her to be my girlfriend. And the next day she called me and said that she made a mistake saying yes to me. And that was just an absolutely crumbling thing to hear. But one thing I have kind of like learned from just experiences like that is just trying to internalize and deal with things like that on your own. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with just this current situation with relationship troubles, but it could be with things like addiction or just some other sort of dark thing that someone might be going through. I just feel like trying to handle it by yourself and internalizing this and trying to like sort it all out through your head. I kind of like to use the analogy that it's like slaying a dragon. It's just like there's no way you could slay a dragon by yourself. But if you have good people in your life who have different experiences, different attributes, and, who have maybe even slayed dragons in their own lives, then you can reach out to them, get their insight, and then they can kind of sort of help you fight through this. But yeah, it's just sitting around with like the six other guys that were, well, there was a few more than that, at this hunting camp, and just telling them like all the stuff that I'm dealing with is just, man, I didn't have to carry that with me after camp anymore. Like I left it all right there because I had like just some perspective, just because I made it a point to have these to try to establish these relationships and these connections. And yeah, man, it just worked out so well. And so I'm, again, quick shout out to Colin and High Caliber Hunts for setting this up, because yeah, I needed that weekend for sure.
And it's so cool that you were, I will use the word vulnerable again, vulnerable enough to say that on air, right? Because like, how it is, like, oh yeah, like if I can just help anybody, if I can just help one person. I've been saying that on my show for as long as I've been doing it, right? Well, you might, yeah, like, yeah, that's cool, but you're probably helping more than just one person, because if I help you out, you might help somebody else out that I don't even know about, or that I don't even hear about it. So you think that you're only helping out maybe one guy, maybe two guys, but like they're taking what you gave them and they're giving that to their circle of people, and they're helping out those folks. And you don't even see none of that, which is what you just said can do, right? Like someone might listen to this and be like, I've been that guy, like I had to go through that. And you might get a DM here in a week or two and meet a new friend type of thing. And you guys can talk through like what it was like going through it, like a breakup or something like that. So I think it's really important to not just show the wins, because we all do win in some aspect, but I know for a fact that all of us take L's. All of us
Yeah.
take L's.
Yeah, and that's I think why I was okay with bringing that story forth, just because it's just when a lot of people face situations like that, it almost seems like the whole world is against them, as if like they're the only ones going through that situation in that moment, where it's like I know that I was, and I know I'm not the only one who's ever dealt with something like this, and so I really wanted to bring that forth and, go over like what kind of helped me kind of get through that. And that was, reaching out to people that I can count on and that I can confide in and share all this stuff with. And again, take their different experiences and their different attributes to help me slay this dragon that I was fighting. And yeah, because at the end of the day, it's just, I getting this story out there. It's like, I know I'm not the only one. And if this could help, some other people out there who I know are facing this as we speak, something similar, then, I'm going to put it out there. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well said, man. I think it's huge. I think it's important, and it's cool that you have a platform in order to do that. And people listen. They might not reach out to you, but they listen and they appreciate it. I know I do.
All right, right on, man. All right. So what do you have coming up as far as let's talk about, let's say, in the ultra racing space, as well as the hunting space? Of course, we're just kind of in mid-May right about now. So we still got plenty of 2023 left. So what do you have on the horizon for the rest of this year?
Yeah, like I said, end of May, I'm going to get back out to the west side of the state and try to slay that dragon, like you say. I got to get that monkey off my back one way or the other. In terms of like events, I'm only doing one event this year. I got hurt earlier this year. I was supposed to do a 100-miler in Georgia. Had to can that for next year, so we'll do that next year. But I'll talk about it over on my platform, the Mid-State Mile. It's an ultra marathon, last man standing platform or structured. I don't know how to say it, but that race looks like it's only 1.1 miles and you have 20 minutes to do it, but it's 340 feet of elevation gained and lost. I'm sure Colin might have talked to you about it, because he's supposed to run it too. So yeah, that's a big one. I'm really investing in my training. I hired a coach. That coach happened to win that race last year. He ran 128 miles or something like that, and 40 some odd hours, 38 hours. I don't know what it was, but Justin Hamilton, Vertex Ultra Coaching. If you need a coach for an ultra, that's your guy. Basically 24/7 assistance. Maps out your plan for the week, and just a great guy and very affordable. So yeah, he's been putting me through the freaking ringer, man. I haven't had a 3-day stretch like this in a while. I was actually just telling my wife that before I came down here to record with you. So yeah, we'll do that. Hopefully we can do better than last year. At least that's the goal. Now that I actually know how I'm supposed to train. So I hope that correlates to the actual event. And then yeah, my wife and I, we usually take a trip for our honeymoon. It'll be 2 years, August 15th. Not sure where we're gonna go, but we'll do something. And by the time I get home, hopefully I'm archery antelope hunting. And then we'll ride that right into elk season. Peyton and I have talked about him a little bit throughout this show. We're going to go to the Bob Marshall for a week and hit that, which is like true backcountry shit, which I'm stoked about it. That's kind of why I moved out here, to really hunt crazy country like that. So yeah, that's basically the rest of my year. One event, and try to be a good husband, try to build my business. And then in the fall, I'm not around a whole ton, so I like to chase the animals out here.
Okay. Well, speaking of business as well, and I just remembered something. I thought like you had originally named your podcast, the Nock On podcast, but I just remember that's John Dudley's brand was Nock On, but you were Montana Nock. So yeah, I got a little bit screwed up there. So Mr. Dudley, please don't hate me for my mistake. But yeah, but now you have kind of sort of changed things up a little bit. Now you are the Nock Performance podcast. Nock Performance is your brand. So just kind of tell us a little bit about it, and what can our listeners expect from you?
Yeah. When will this drop? Like a week or two, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Let's see. I can actually give you an exact date right now. This will be dropping on Monday, May 22nd.
Oh, okay, cool. So the news will be out. I'm actually going to make a post here, probably tomorrow morning. I'm full time doing this, man. I'm offering performance based coaching for men. If you are trying to get stronger, if you're trying to become more of a hybrid athlete, if you want to lose weight, if you just want more structure in your nutrition, basically anything performance based, I'd like to think that I'm your guy. So I'm going to be doing this full time now that I am quote unquote retired from law enforcement. And I have a incredibly big passion for it. I'm getting certified as we speak, just for more credibility to coach strangers. Hopefully they put their trust in me. I've been doing this, like I told you, I've been doing this since I was 16 and haven't really got off the path. So I have a lot of knowledge. I've tried a lot of things. I know what works. I know what doesn't. I've done all the diets. I've done all the workouts, and I have a pretty good understanding of how to get somebody back on the right path, because I know what it's like to kind of just be stuck. I know what it's like to, hope and dream. And I mean, that's all fine and dandy, but you do need to take action. And I think that I can help a lot of people take action and improve their overall quality of life. So yeah, Nock Performance is no longer just a podcast. It's more of a business. That's why I rebranded this whole thing. Because it's a passion of mine. And I think that I can, again, I think that I would be really good at it. And I know that I am. I've coached a few guys and they've seen good results kind of off the record. But yeah, that'll be the full-time gig over here. So yeah, I'm stoked about it, man. And I'm excited to see this journey of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and also just touching on your podcast as well. I'm certainly a listener, and I've definitely enjoyed the episodes that you've been putting out. And it's just earlier this week, you actually got to interview a pretty cool guest who had just appeared on the All Around Adventure podcast, and you got to talk with former Navy SEAL and #1 New York Times bestselling author Jack Carr. And I've been meaning to ask you, because I know your interview with him was just a couple of days ago from when we're talking, but it's just I wanted to save it for this. But how did that go?
Dude, it was awesome. And that is 100% to your credit. You basically, I think I mentioned it to Colin. He's like, I might know a guy. And you apparently already had it set up. And then you cold texted me, giving me Jack's publisher's information. I sent him an email and I had it booked within an hour. So it was really cool, man. Exactly what you said. Jack is freaking awesome. Like, it just, I don't really know how else to describe him. Like, it felt like we knew each other, and I listened to your guys' episode, and just super easy flowing conversation. It was fun to like small talk before the podcast and then do the interview. And then like after, he didn't just bail, like we talked for another 10 minutes off the air. But yeah, that was really cool. And that's a huge kudos to you for setting that up. And no, just, it was pretty big. Like, I was nervous and shit. Like, before the episode, I was like pacing around downstairs, like, okay, yeah, 15 minutes. Josh says he's going to be right on time. My wife's like, you need to settle down. And I was like, yeah, you're right. This dude's just another dude. And he's just like you and I, puts his pants on the same way. So it was really fun. Probably one of my favorites that I've done, just because I've read all the books and I'm a fan, like, I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm a fan of the guy's work, and I think he does a lot of cool things. And it's always cool and refreshing, right, when you see somebody online and they can act a certain way, but Jack is literally exactly who he portrays himself to be in interviews and social media posts. And it's always refreshing when you get somebody on that's truly who they portray themselves to be. So thank you for that, man. But yes, that comes out. That'll be out by the time this comes out. But yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, I definitely share that same sentiment, because I got to talk with him a little bit, like before and after we had recorded for the show, and that's exactly what I felt. It's like he's the exact same way. Like, every podcast I've listened to him on, like every media appearance that I've seen him on, he's the exact same way. And it was just kind of cool. Like, he's asking me, about my life. It's like, oh my goodness, Jack Carr, he wants to know about me. He wants to know about archaeology. He wants to know about where I traveled to. And because I was the exact same way. I was a little bit nervous and starstruck too, because I'm a big fan of the books. And then of course he got to, be in the presence of men like Chris Pratt and, the terminalists was #1 on Amazon Prime for like a month straight. And, he just made his debut as an author about like 5 years ago. And so he just like rose up there so fast, and but yeah, he wants to know about me. And I'm like, ooh. So yeah, it was pretty awesome.
I'll do my subtle flex. This book doesn't come out for another 5 days, and I've had it for like a month. So that was also really cool to get a copy of the book before it came out. And I was nervous too, right? Because I haven't even read one word of it. And I told Jack that. I was like, dude, I'll be honest with you, I haven't read your book yet, and I've had it for like 3 weeks. But there's a reasoning behind that. One, I'm currently reading a book, and two, if I was a good podcaster, I probably would have read it so we could have talked about it, right? But I was like, I really want to enjoy this book. Like, I don't want to have to rush it. I don't want to have to read it in 3 days. Because it's like a good Netflix show or something, right? Like when it's over, and you're like, oh man, like now what am I gonna watch? Well, with these books, it's like, now what am I gonna read, right? Like nothing ever compares to these books. And I'm not even really like a fiction thriller type of guy. I like more autobiography stuff and stuff that I can like learn from. You're not gonna learn a whole lot from this series of books apart from how badass James Reese is, right? But he was like, I really respect that. So it was kind of cool that he was receptive to me not opening the book yet.
Yeah. Well, and then of course it's the longest book that he's written so far. So obviously you probably couldn't rush through that even if you wanted to. And then also one thing I was excited about was that he said that this was going to be among like the most action packed, but certainly the most brutal. And I'm really curious to see how he's going to do that with this book, because James Reese is brutal in some of the other 5 books. Like, yeah, just a straight savage, in a very, very awesome and fun reading way. So, yeah, I can't wait to have it in store. And, I'm typically more of an audiobook listener, because the guy that he has reading for his series, Ray Porter, does just such an amazing job with reading all of his books. And, it's just, one of my favorites is actually Savage Son, his 3rd book, because
that's my favorite. That's my favorite, dude.
Well, it's a toss up between that one and the 4th one, The Devil's Hand. But one thing I kind of liked about Savage Son, and this made me kind of interested in looking at Montana a little bit myself as well, because a good part of that story does take place in Montana, and the way that
so much of it.
Yeah, and the way that he's describing, Coomba Ranch, and then, honestly, I think the Hastings family are among my favorite characters in the book. I really want to see more of Rafe Hastings in like future books as well, because I really like him as a character, and the whole story with the family too, like growing up in Rhodesia and just having to be self-reliant and everything, and then and taking all of that to the States and starting up their ranch there in Montana, and just the way they're describing the cabin and the lakes and getting up in the mountains, and then the wildlife that they're trying to hunt too. And I'm just like, man, he did like so well with this like slice of life side, where it's like, I kind of almost want like to hear more of that. Like I want more of the books to take place in settings like that too. It just does so well. I mean, it's just a really enjoyable series.
Yeah, Only the Dead, Jack told me, is 139,000 words, roughly, which is a lot of freaking words.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you loved Savage Son as much as I did, because, I mean, he's referencing things that, like, places I've been, right? Like, I think it might be in that book, but he's like, I flew into Billings when he was, like, bailing out, like, trying to escape. And I'm like, I watch planes take flight and land, like, from my couch. The airport's right here. So it's just really cool to kind of be able to relate to some of the things that he's talking about.
Yeah, and then also just the reflection of some of previous novels as well, as like, of course, like Savage Son was based on The Most Dangerous Game, which I've read as well, and there's a lot of like overlap too. Like the main antagonist in The Most Dangerous Game is a Russian aristocrat who likes to take people to his island where he will hunt them for sport. And it's the same thing. You have a Russian intelligence officer who will take people to this island that he has to hunt them for sport. And but he just did like so well with that overlap too. And then also just like the feats that he has James Reese do to get the job done, like literally spend 6 months trekking across Siberia in the dead of winter to kill one target. I'm like, that is like the most savage thing I think I've seen a fictional or read a fictional character doing in a book. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, big time, man. And um, you're more of an audiobook guy. See, I'm the total opposite, man. Like I have to have that book in my hand, right? Like I got a whole bookshelf that I just stack all my books on, and every now and then I'll get on social and be like, "Hey, I just finished this. Who wants it?" First one to DM, I'll send it. I got books to guys like I don't. I'm probably gonna have to make a post and be like, if you have one of my books, can you please send it back? Because I can't keep track of all the books that I send out. But I'm really big, and I think that's just how I grew up. I grew up reading every day after school with my grandmother, like the Harry Potter books and stuff like that. But everybody has their own niche, right?
Yeah, well, I think with me, especially with me traveling so much, like I'm literally flying out of a plane at least like once a week now. I have this weird thing where it's like if I try to actually like read words on like a page or on a tablet or a screen or whatever, I actually get really, really dizzy. Like if trying to read in a moving car or trying to read on a
Yeah.
plane, it makes me really, really dizzy. And that's why I like the audiobooks, and especially traveling, for my job, now that I've moved to Texas, a lot of my work projects that I have to go to are in like the South, kind of west here, in places like Louisiana, and even I've done some work in Texas as well. So I'm driving to those places, and so it's like if I got 4 hours in the car, yeah, let me get an audiobook going here, so that's usually where like my preference for audiobooks comes in. And again, Ray Porter does just such an amazing job with reading the James Reese series. So yeah, it's been audiobooks for me as of late. And also moving around so much, it's just, yeah, trying to have to fill up a bunch of boxes and totes with books does get a little bit cumbersome. So yeah, audiobooks has kind of been my thing as of late.
I mean, I can't imagine how many freaking books I would finish if I actually did that because I run so much. I ran, I think, 8 hours this week already, and
Mm-hmm.
That's only three runs, so I could just knock books out of the park. But I like to. I'm the same way though. Like in a car, I get nauseous and stuff. Plane, not so much, but I like to. I take a journal now, and I always have like, hey, read your book. So I always take the time where I'm like, okay, I grab my book, I go upstairs in bed or whatever. I like that time, and that was something that I know that you and Jack, well, Jack said this multiple times, but he's big on being very cognizant of people's time, right? Like that's why he wants to write such a good story because he's trusting, or we're trusting Jack with our time, right? Like it sucked to read a book, get halfway through it and be like, gosh, this book sucks. I'm never going to get these hours back. And I recently closed a book a couple months ago where I was like, I just can't do this book. Like I'm trying for the second time. I read it like a year ago, got 100 pages in. I was like, nope. And I'm like, I'm gonna try it again. Got halfway through and I'm like, I just can't do it. Just can't do it. Um, so yeah, I appreciate Jack for putting out such a good series, and I don't have a problem giving him my time when I read these books.
Yeah, the feeling is mutual. That's for sure. All right, man. So as we kind of start winding down here, another thing I ask all my guests to do is issue a challenge to our listeners, because we got to hear some stories from you. We got to get some information from you. But as I always say, stories and information can only take our listeners so far. They have to follow it up with action to go out there and do amazing things in their lives. So with that, what challenge would you issue to our listeners today for them to go out there and start living a more adventurous life?
Mine's easy, man. And we've kind of touched on it throughout the duration of the show. Find something that you absolutely hate doing. Freaking do it. Period. Like it's gonna suck. I promise you. It's gonna freaking suck. For me, that thing that I hate more than anything is freaking running. I remember the first time I ever ran for an hour, dude, and I was like, I didn't know this was possible. I called my freaking fiance at the time. I was like, I just ran for 60 minutes. Now I can run for 20 plus hours. Like you will get better at it. I promise. Whatever that looks like for you. I don't care if it's starting a company or, calling that girl that you've always kind of liked but have been scared to chat with, or trying a different food. It does not matter, but do something that's going to put you in an uncomfortable position and just attack it. And then do it again the next day. Because the first day is going to suck and the second day is probably going to suck even worse. And then do it for a week and then do it for a month. Next thing you know, you're half a year in. You're going to get better at it. The suck is going to decrease a tad, but it's still going to challenge you enough to be like, wow, this is benefiting me in one way, shape, or form, mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever it is. I challenge somebody who's listening to this to do something that they've always kind of put off and to just do it. And it's going to take work, and it's going to take tears and sweat and time, maybe money, but do it, because you don't want to be this guy. And I fear this, man, more than anything. I fear being 50 years old, sitting on my porch with a bottle of whiskey, a dog, a couple of kids running around, watching the sunset and being like, guy, why didn't you try that when you were younger? You could have did this. I don't want to live with that. That's why I'm always like moving from state to state across the country, putting myself out there, doing these dumb freaking events, pitching everybody that I can that I want to interview, even though they might read it and not respond. So what? Who cares? Who cares? Like, I just interviewed a #1 New York Times bestselling author with your help. But if I wouldn't have sent that email, I wouldn't have. Who cares if they say no? Like, it is what it is. So do something that is going to put you in an uncomfortable spot. Take it by the balls and just run with it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a big point of what you just said is the consistent action and putting in the work involved too, because again, no matter what you set out to do, you are going to face that resistance. You are going to face those setbacks and those failures, but as you and I kind of talked about when we shared our hunting stories, we both missed some shots out there in the wild, but it's just, we still went back out, and, that's what you got to do. You just got to go back out. And I'm actually going to probably do a solo cast on that now. That's actually kind of a cool idea, but anyway, just stay with it, stay the course.
Yeah, if you love this shit as much as you say you love it, like, you're not always going to hit a home run, period. Like, I would give anything to accounted for that little ledge that I hit, right? Would do anything, but I can guarantee you, if we're driving down that sang dang road in 3 weeks and that bear's in that sang dang spot, I ain't going to hit that ledge. I'm not going to make that mistake twice. But you'll never freaking know if you just throw the towel in. Can't throw the towel in, man. If it's important to you, you're going to find the time, and you're going to put forth the training and the effort, the money and the gas and all that stuff, and you're going to stay after it,
Right on, brother. All right. So what I have for you next is my final 3. These are 3 fun questions that all of my guests get asked at the end of the show. So of course you're going to get asked these as well. And the first of these 3 questions is, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far?
Ever?
Mm-hmm. So far. This is
bad, and it might be really generic, but people don't know this about me, I don't think. But like, I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm a true degenerate at heart. Like, I like to have fun. Yeah, I work hard, I train hard, but like, I like to have fun. And Vegas has my heart, dude. I just love being on the strip and going to gamble and going to just like let your hair down a little bit. I love gambling on sports. I don't do it hardly at all anymore, but I just love that. I love having a few beers. I've been there with my dad and my buddies, and I love Vegas, man. And I don't know what it is about it, but there's just that young, like 18, 19, 21-year-old still in me. It's deep down in me. It doesn't come out hardly at all anymore, but I love Vegas, dude. And I've been to some cool places, but I freaking love Vegas.
Well, it's funny that you say your 18, 19-year-old inner self comes forward, but don't you have to be 21 to pretty much do anything in Vegas?
Hey, you better calm down over there.
All right. Well, I will say this, Tyler. That's a first to come up on the All Around Adventure podcast.
I'm sure it is.
No one has said Vegas at all. And yeah, I will say I definitely was not expecting that answer. I was sure I was going to you were probably going to take me to like some place like way, way, way out in the middle of nowhere, way out in the backwoods somewhere. But all right, Vegas though, man. So
you asked me the same question at the end of September, and I might change my mind because I'm very excited to go to the Bob Marshall. So yeah, but Vegas does hold a special place to me.
Okay, so forgive my ignorance, but what's the Bob Marshall?
It's 1.2 million acres of basically just pure freaking country. It has the highest concentration of grizzlies in the lower 48. It's
really?
Just, there's everything there, yeah. And I've heard is
that in Montana?
Beautiful. Yeah, like northwest Montana. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Right on, man. So yeah, I'll definitely touch base with you after that. I'd be curious to hear how that experience goes. So right on, man.
Me
All
too.
right. So next up in this final three, what is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do?
Run 100 miles, dude. Yeah, I've been doing this ultra thing for 3 or 4 years, and I've worked my way up, right? Yeah, that thing I read 2 miles an hour, and then 50 Ks, 50 milers. I've ran 68 miles twice in my life. Can't seem to get past that, but that will change here next month. Was signed up for that freaking 100 in April, had to can it. So yeah, I really want to get a buckle. I really want to get a buckle. I know I can do it. So yeah, that and having kids, I can't wait to be a dad.
Okay, right on, man. And the last of these three questions, and this is a two-parter. What is your favorite animal, and have you seen this animal in the wild?
My favorite animal is a jaguar, bar none. Yeah, I think they're freaking awesome. I want to get a tattoo of a jaguar someday. I have a lot of tattoos, but not of a jaguar, and it's probably a good thing that I have never seen one in the wild. I'd like to, maybe from afar, but yeah, I always have been intrigued by them. I did a presentation on jaguars in like fourth grade. They have the strongest jaw out of any animal, and I just think they're badass.
Well, one thing I find very amazing about the Jaguar, when you think about just big cats in general, is just, I would say that the Jaguar is probably the most versatile out of like any of them. It is very strong. It is fast. It is elusive. Like I've seen like these creatures jump into rivers and come out with like a crocodile like
I
clutched in
was
their jaws.
was literally just going to say that. Like, there's clips of them just like swan diving off of cliffs and then rustling around the water for 3 seconds. And they have a whole, like, full blown freaking crocodile in their mouth. And then they just drag it into the weeds. And like, I think that was on like Nature's Metal. That page is crazy. But yeah, like, they're just savages, dude. Like, unbelievable creatures that I just think are badass.
Yeah. So good choice for sure, man. Right on. All right. Well, Tyler, I think that's it, man. I think that's all the questions that I have for you. But before we call it a day here, let's just go over how our listeners and how our viewers can connect with you and where they can tune into the Nock Performance Podcast and maybe hit you up if they are looking for some performance coaching. So, websites, social media accounts, what do you got for us?
Yeah, easiest thing, man, is just at Nock Performance on Instagram, NOCK Performance. My personal page is tagged with that too if you want to hit me up on there, but I'm not really as active on there as I used to be because I'm trying to grow a company, trying to grow a brand, and I like to think that I interview a lot of really cool, interesting people. So the conversations over there are a lot like this. What you see is what you get. I'd probably be cursing a lot more if this was my platform, but I'm trying to be respectful. I think I said that on a show that I was on a couple weeks ago or something too. But yeah, they're pretty raw, man. Like, I'm sure we'll meet in person one day, and what you're seeing right now is exactly what you get. And I like to pride myself on that. I am 100% unapologetically myself, and that's what the show portrays. So yeah, that's the easiest spot. And if you have any questions about coaching or anything like that, just shoot me a DM. I'm pretty active on there throughout the day and would love to talk.
All right, man. And I'll get it linked up in the show notes for this episode. Or if our viewers are watching on YouTube, they can find it in the description below. So I'll be right there for them to just click away. All right. Well, Tyler, man, I want to thank you very much for taking the time for joining me. And, it's just been great to connect with you, for the past, like, however long we've known each other. But yeah, man, it's just great to have you on the show, just to hear your stories, get to know you a little bit better. So yeah, man, thanks for being here and sharing your stories and insights with myself and the listeners. This has been great.
No, it has been great, man. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm glad we got to do this. Honestly, probably one of the favorite shows that I've been on. Just, you're really good at interviewing and no dead air apart from me looking from my little spiel from 3 years ago. Just really fun. What you're doing is great. I love following your stuff and tuning in to your episodes. So keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great things. And I'm excited to see where you take it.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, brother. Thanks again, man.
Yep. Thank you, man.